You're watching Bethel Today, sponsored by the Bethel Democratic Town Committee. I'm Adam Chiara, filling in for Matt Knickerbocker, who is away. Today's guest is no stranger to Bethel. He has, for the last 2 years, served as Bethel's 2nd District State Representative. He is now up for re-election, and he has come by today to talk a little bit about what he's done and what he plans on doing if re-elected. He is Representative Jason Bartlett. Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Adam. It's great to be here.
Yes,
and there's no if.
There's no if. I know. When?
Thank you.
He is when he
You got to
is
give me
elected.
confidence.
You don't need any confidence. You're confident enough. But all right. So we'd like to talk a bit. You know, I'm a campaign coordinator, and when I first started, I wanted to know a little bit about the issues that you fought for and what you accomplished during your first term. And I think it's very important for the viewers to know, because I think it's something you should be proud of. So I'd like to jump right into that. And I'd like to talk about what I believe to be one of your keynote accomplishments, and that would be the properties of Bogus Farm and Terre Haute. Can you please explain a little bit behind these properties and what the story is behind this?
Well, these are two properties that I kind of dedicated 2 years of my first term of trying to advocate to make them open space. We're very successful with Bogus Farm. It was a difficult land transaction that needed to take place because the seller, of course, wanted the most that he could get in terms of price, and there was an appraisal done on the property, and it came in significantly less than what the seller wanted to sell to the state of Connecticut. Now, Bogus Farm is a unique piece of property because it's right next to Huntington Park. So I was very interested in the issue, as were my colleagues in the General Assembly, in terms of trying to move this process along. And what we found was that there are state regulations that say that you cannot sell a property for more than it's worth. Because if we were to begin to do that practice, you'd have corruption and a lot of negative things that could happen in terms of public policy in the state. So we had to work with the Department of Environmental Protection and try to be creative and try to come up with some solutions as to how perhaps we could carve this property so that we could extend Huntington Park into this what we call Bogus Farm and make it one piece. And we were successful in doing that. I'm very proud to have been a part of that process and working with the DEP and working with my other elected officials in terms of trying to come up with this solution, and we did. And the governor had a press conference that I was at some weeks back, and the state of Connecticut bought the property, and it's now open space. And what that means, Adam, is that there's a conservation easement on the property so that nobody can develop it ever. It's very permanent. Open space has to be very permanent, and you need a very restrictive deed on it. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because my baby, which is the Terre Haute property, which I've asked that the town of Bethel and Danbury and the state of Connecticut get together and negotiate something here, is not open space. And I think that's another precious property that should be designated as open space. And the issue, you said, what's going on here? Well, there's been a lot of mistruths told by the Republican Party, by the leadership, in particular in the Selectman's office, as to what this deal is all about. This is about 200 acres out of 600. And it is about property that is located within the boundaries of Danbury, Connecticut, not Bethel. So we have a very unique situation here. We have Bethel owning property in another town.
Right.
And so what I did was I said, well, I mean, nothing's happened there. It's preserved in terms of its natural environment, but it is not preserved in terms of any permanency. So the first selectman in town, a Republican, has talked about mining and strip mining it for rocks and whatever else, forestry and that kind of thing. And I've talked about keeping it permanent so that we can have the Ives Trail go through there, so that we can preserve the character of the neighborhoods around it, and so that people can use it for recreational purposes. And I put in $2 million in the bond fund. I've worked with Mayor Boughton, who is a Republican, on the other side of the aisle, and he's put money into his bond allocations within the city of Danbury, so that perhaps we have $2 million in state money that I've secured, and we have millions of dollars that the mayor of Danbury secured. We put that together, and we buy it, the state and Danbury buy it from Bethel and make it permanent, and everybody wins. And that would be $2+, maybe $3, maybe $4 million in unencumbered money that could come to the Bethel taxpayer.
Right.
So we could go out and buy more open space within our town. And that's really been the issue and kind of the debate, if people have been following, between myself and the first selectman in town, because he'd like to leave it open to sell to developers and to put houses on it. And I think that, you know, in this campaign, it'll be interesting to see if my Republican opponent takes his position of selling it to developers and putting houses on it or strip mining it, or my position, which is preserving open space.
So basically the way you have it now, it's a win-win for everybody.
That's right. That's right. And you know, she has already said that she's for open space, but she hasn't said if she wants to preserve Terre Haute in any fashion. So it'll be interesting, because it's easy to talk, the good talk, and to say the words, but I've been out there actually putting actions to what my promises were when I first ran.
And this kind of brings me to what I was going to talk about. You said the first selectman obviously doesn't agree with you with this, and I've heard a few times that they've actually said that you had nothing to do with this. What are the basis of these claims, and how can you defend yourself? I mean, how can you say, look, I was the one that got this going? What kind of proof can you put about this?
Well, I think, you know, we live in the town of Bethel, and there's a lot of hyperbole that happens out there. And it's been very unfortunate. I mean, you know, I work with my colleagues, and we share credit certainly for many of the projects that are out there. And then some of the projects are unique and individual to the state rep in terms of what your passion is. What do you want to have on your record? And open space has been my passion. And I don't think anybody who's in the area can deny that. And so I'm comfortable in terms of press, in terms of, you know, letters, and in terms of, you know, where I've been in terms of my record, that I can take credit for that. Part of we're having the same kind of debate on bringing $500,000 to downtown Bethel so that we can make improvements to parking, so that we can perhaps help the library and help the teen center. And I've watched the first selectman rant and rave on TV saying that, you know, that Representative Bartlett there is no $500,000. There is no $500,000. And, you know, it's just very funny and curious, because, you know, a few days later, my colleague and good friend, Representative Scribner, took credit for $500,000 for downtown Bethel in his newsletter. So most people, I think, you know, read through the hysterics and will look at and see what people have been advocating and what they stand for. I'm pretty comfortable that in the end people know that I'm working hard for the town.
Right.
And that's really what I care about.
Very good. So, you know, we talked a little bit about money. I like to keep on with that track here, because it's all about money now. And
that's right. Well, it's tough economic times, and if you can bring monies back to the town of Bethel, that helps everybody. Everybody's struggling right now. And, you know, I said that in my campaigns, that I wanted to bring money back to my town. And we never had a state rep that lived in town. I live in Bethel.
right.
So I care about my neighbors, and you know, and I look at the referendums that we have. So it's just been really key to try to infuse, you know, our municipal and our education budget with some state funds.
And let's talk a little bit about those funds that you've brought back. Now, some of this I believe is also in Danbury, which is part of what you represent. But for example, the film festival. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, before we jump to the film festival, I want to mention education. Because that's important. That goes directly to the taxpayers, if you don't mind.
Sure.
That's $700,000 in additional revenue. Now, you'll see every candidate running for state rep say, I'm going to bring more money back in ECS and educational cost-sharing formulas so that our taxpayers can get some relief. Well, I did that. I did $700,000 in addition for the town of Bethel. $3 million for Danbury, $700,000 for Bethel. And that was pretty significant based on, you know, our population. In terms of the Film Fest, well, that was one of my babies. One of our residents, Tom Carruthers, who lives in Bethel, started the film festival, the Connecticut Film Festival in Bethel. So it really, the genesis is right here over at Bethel Cinema where we started. We got the restaurants involved and the theater, and it was a great thing for Bethel. And Tom wanted to bring this to the next level. So he approached me and he asked me for my assistance, and I set up meetings with Mayor Boughton and he and others, the Northwest Tourism Council. I took them up and met the Connecticut Culture and Tourism folks up in Hartford, introduced them to the speaker, put them on Connecticut's film task force here in the state of Connecticut, and we had money in the budget, $150,000 in the budget that didn't get passed in the last session. And we also were able to get $75,000 from the town of City of Danbury. So that was a successful event. And I look forward to an upcoming announcement where we'll have, and this is a little preview, but we'll have an announcement in terms of the state making an investment in the Film Fest. And it is good for Bethel folks because it's something that we can do right here at home and enjoy great movies and learn about film and go to these workshops. I think it was a great experience that we had this last year. We want to build on that going forward.
And you've also brought money to WestConn, is that correct?
Well, I was a part of an effort to get $7 million to enhance WestConn. They're going to build an arts building, and WestConn really wants to go in that direction in terms of curricula. And so they will have an infrastructure now with this new bond money. And yeah, I'm very proud of that. We all worked very hard to get the governor to release that money and to make sure that it was secured in the original bond package. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's great for WestConn. It's going to, really be a brand, I think, going forward for the college.
Well, before you jumped on me with education, so I think you really want to talk about it. So I'm just going to skip ahead and we'll go to education.
Okay.
You were endorsed by the Connecticut Education Association, and I hear you talk a lot about educational accountability. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Well, what I mean by educational accountability is that we spend a lot of money in the state of Connecticut on education. And, what are we getting for our dollar? I was one of the few in Hartford that voted against Sheff versus O'Neill, for example. That is a boondoggle of $700 million in proportion because I didn't see any benefit to spending that money. I would rather give money to the Hartford school system and let them do something creative to educate their kids than to try to send Hartford students out to Glastonbury and Farmington and try to get Farmington and Glastonbury students into Hartford. We've spent $700 million, and one of the few legislators to actually say, no, stop, this is not the right thing to do. Educational accountability is being able to say no. It's also trying to empower our state commissioner of education and say, you know what, we want to give you the power to go into school districts like a Bridgeport or a Hartford or New Haven or somewhere in the state of Connecticut that are not performing, and have the state go in and to make changes. And if that means going against the unions, then so be it. If that means changing the principal, then so be it. We need to change the administration because our kids deserve a chance and an opportunity. So that's what I mean by educational accountability. I pushed a bill, for example, to give $4 million to the Department of Education to track each student in the state of Connecticut, so that if we have students that come from Danbury into Bethel and our scores go down, we're going to know why. Because they were actually in school from 1 to 3 grade in Danbury, and they came to Bethel in grade 4 and they still can't read. I want to know that. I want to know if a student is coming from Waterbury. I want to know if a student is coming from New York. And so what we did was we gave each student an individual identifier that's going to follow them through their entire secondary education career. And so as they move from school to school, we'll be able to adjust test scores, and we'll be able to see what schools were having what kind of impact on that student. That's accountability. that we can measure and quantify. So those are some of the things that I've worked on the education committee. Those are some of the things that are very important to me and will continue to be.
Okay, I'll get back to my agenda now, that you got that education out of your system. We're going to talk a little bit about health-related fields, and I know one of your pet projects really is Lyme disease, prevention and awareness. Tell us a little bit about what you've done with Lyme disease, because I think that's interesting. It's something you don't hear a lot of legislators talk about.
Well, I'm actually, if I get reelected, I'm hoping that this is going to be one of my signature bills, comprehensive bill that will be a part of my legacy, actually, because people have not talked about it, and it's starting to pick up some steam, especially in the area. But I'm happy to have been on the ground floor in terms of the effort to do something about Lyme disease here in the area. Basically, my first year I had two bills. One was a task force, and one was reporting, because the state of Connecticut had totally dropped the ball and not reported Lyme disease in the same way that they had for 6-7 years. And so I was for going back to a mandatory reporting system where if you tested positive for Lyme disease right at the doctor's office, that the blood test labs would report that and not be passive reporting. Because what happened was we were #1 in the country, we dropped to #3. But I don't think that was ever true. And then secondly, if I get reelected, I've been working on a comprehensive bill that'll work on both prevention and also access to care. Prevention in terms of having a statewide plan that really educates people. I want education in the curriculum in our schools so kids are educated. I'd like to see more kinds of prevention measures taken that we can do. And also access to care, because right now we have an issue where you test positive for Lyme disease, you only get 4 weeks of antibiotics, and then you're done. And there's two schools of thought within the medical community, and the largest school says that's it, you can't get any more care. Well, most people, if they've been bitten by a tick and they didn't know it and it's in your system, and if it's in for any period of time, that can have real significant physical and psychological impacts on you. And it's going to require more than 4 weeks of antibiotics. And so I would like to ensure access to care and to make sure that insurance companies and doctors are protected when they treat Lyme patients. So that's going to be one of my bills.
Out of curiosity, how did this come about, you wanting to take on Lyme disease?
Oh, well, my mom has Lyme disease, has had Lyme disease. She has had chronic Lyme. And so I was very aware of the issue because of that, because it's in my family. And also a number of constituents from Reading and Bethel and Ridgefield and Newtown actually came and approached me and said, we need an advocate because there's absolutely nothing happening up in Hartford, and there's some serious issues. So I kind of dug into it from working with the advocates in the area.
Staying on the course of healthcare here, what have you done last session in Hartford to better healthcare in Connecticut here in general?
Well, a lot's happened. Number one, Husky, which I serve on Human Services. I worked on the Husky plan a lot, trying to make sure that providers were adequately paid so that they take care of the real needy that are on Medicare or Medicaid, that those folks have access to care and that they're getting proper care so that they're not going to Danbury Hospital and using the emergency room. Okay, so improving the Husky program, we did a bill that allowed minors guaranteed coverage through your parents' health plan up to your 26, and that will take effect this January. So right now, if you're in college and you're going to school, you can stay on your parents' plan, but if you drop out or you decide you want a semester off, guess what? You don't have health insurance. So that was very, very important because I have two young adults now, two kids that are 22 and 20, and both of them have had that experience where, we had health insurance and then all of a sudden they dropped out of school and, took a semester off and they didn't have health insurance. Now they go back to school this semester and they will have health insurance. So we have these gaps.
Right.
And, in a lot of families they're not able to fill that gap. And so, it shouldn't be that way. I should be able to keep them on my health insurance until they're really finished, because, you know, some people are on the 5-year plan, some people are on the 6-year plan, you know how that goes. And their health is very important to me, and you know, we need to have mechanisms to make sure that they're cared for. So that was an important bill. And then we also worked on what we call the Healthcare Partnership Bill, which allows municipalities and small businesses and nonprofits to buy into the state's health plan. And that is intended to give people more choice and hopefully save municipalities and boards of education money, which we can then give back to the taxpayer.
Important.
Right? And then to allow for more people to be covered, because we just have too many uninsured and underinsured folks. So that's another bill that's going to come back up next session, and I'll be a strong proponent of that. And many other things still need to be done in this area. And I've been very active again on human services and just some of my own initiatives in terms of seeing that we have more universal health care in the state of Connecticut.
Well, our time is getting short, so I do want to hit one more thing before we talk about, you know, what you're going to be doing for your upcoming campaign here. And the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters gave you an 84% approval rating. This was the highest received among any legislators in the Danbury delegation. So I want to say congratulations to that.
Thanks.
And very briefly, can you tell me maybe just a few of the things why they would give you such a high score?
Well, I voted right.
Apparently they think so. Yeah, so.
But there were some major bills. We did electronic recycling. That's a huge problem, you know, with not having, you know, a place to dispose of electronics. You know, things move so fast in the world today with technology that people are always moving on to the next thing. And what do we do with those, you know, with those components? We don't need to just leave it at the dump. That has unintended consequences. So the electronic recycling bill, you know, really builds out a plan so that every time that you buy, you know, something, an iPod, which may be, you know, irrelevant 2 years from now, you can take it in and have it recycled. We also did a global warming cap bill this last session, which has different measurements that we need to meet in the state of Connecticut going forward. As you know, I've been active on open space, and I think the big issue for me going forward is going to be protecting our watersheds. I've been working with Natalie Ketchum, another Republican from a neighboring town that I work well with, in terms of protecting our aquifers in the area. So we want to continue on that score, as well as come up with a plan. We found that there's, in our water supply, you can find a lot of pharmaceuticals. And there's no plan right now of how do you dispose of medication. People just throw it in the garbage, and guess what? That ends up in our water supply. So we need to come up with a plan in the state of Connecticut to address that, so I look forward to working on that.
Okay. All right, so let's move on about your election now that you're running. What kind of things are you doing? How are you campaigning right now?
Well, I've hired one of the smartest young people in the town of Bethel.
Okay, and who would that be?
That graduated from Central Connecticut State University, who's a great person and a hard worker. That would be Adam Chiara.
Oh, I didn't realize.
So, you know, that's a home run right there. But I've been out door knocking. I noticed that I was watching one of the other TV shows, and I saw my opponent say she's not going to door knock until she gets educated on the issues. I hope after watching the show, if you've been able to put up with me for a half an hour, that you know that I'm at least a little bit educated on the issues. So I'm out there talking to folks and hearing what they have to say and trying to think about solutions to their problems and concerns and their issues. So I'm out door knocking hard, and you know, we're just going to stay on the issues and just try to communicate. I'm very proud of my record, and I hope to be able to communicate that to the voters of Bethel, and hopefully they'll vote for me again this re-election.
All right. So we have a few minutes left, so I want you just to cover anything maybe that you'd like to say that I missed. I know I
do want to say my website is jason08.com.
Jason08.com. Plug that in for you.
So if you have any questions, you can email us on the site, and we will answer the emails. And I'd love to have folks, you know, volunteer and get involved, and I'm really excited about it.
What kind of things can people volunteer? Because when you hear volunteer, I think everyone, you know, assumes just going door to door. Are there other things that you could that you could
Well, there's
volunteer?
always, you know, we do specific mailings. We always need help stuffing envelopes. We always need help making phone calls. But really, to tell you the truth, if you could just, you know, tell your neighbors that, you know, what you think. If you think I'm doing a good job, you know, it'd be just great to share that, or write a letter to the paper and share that, you know, you think that I'm trying to help the town. And, you know, that is very appreciated by myself. I'm very humbled that I've had the opportunity to serve, you know, my hometown, and, you know, I would welcome that kind of support.
All right, Jason, we're down to the very end here, so I just want to know really quickly, why did you decide to run again?
Well, I decided that 2 years wasn't enough to get done, you know, a lot of things that I wanted to do. I want to, you know, keep working on the open space issue with Terre Haute. I want to make sure that this money gets to downtown, the $500,000, and build on that. I'd like to help go up to Hartford and see if there's anything we can do to help that second floor of the library get done. I've got constituents that call. You know, I had a young lady that had a daughter who was a teenager that was diabetic, and she couldn't get enough test strips, you know, to get through the month to check on her daughter's blood work and tests, and just to be able to help her get an insurance company to give her the test strips that are necessary. You know, that was very gratifying for me. So if I can do that for another 2 years and have an impact, you know, I like that. I mean, it makes me feel good, and it's what I enjoy doing. So that's why I decided to run again, because, you know, I just think 2 years wasn't enough, and I think if I get reelected, that I'll have even more influence and more power in the legislature to do more for Bethel.
When you get reelected.
Right. Thank you.
All right.
See, that's how we started.
So we're going to end on that. And I just wanted to say, again, we might not have gotten to everything, so you can go to jason08.com, or you can go call him at 203-648-8095 with any other questions. Jason, thank you very much for coming by.
Appreciate it.
And we'll see you around town, door knocking.
Okay.